Good afternoon everyone, Jo Armstrong here, Close to My Heart consultant with an idea for your mini folio books. They look like this. This is one of our brand new items from our new expressions, seasonal expressions book. And if you look through the book, you find them right at the very end. Here we are, mini folio albums, and they are $8 New Zealand. 5 4x4 Kraft panels. You really have to see them in real life to understand what they look like, so I'm just going to quickly show you what it comes like, and I'll show you what I've done to mine. I've adapted a wee bit. So here's the Kraft paper on the outside. We just unwind the piece of twine, open it up, and there we go. And this is a concertina piece of Kraft, and it opens out, so you've got a lovely long area for embellishing and photographs and papers, etc, etc. So there we are. This is what it looks like when it first arrives, and of course we're going to make it look absolutely gorgeous. I did a wonderful kids class this morning where we made our mini albums into these wee books. A very simple project for a kids class. So what I've done is I've taken the blossom papers from our new seasonal expressions. It's a lovely set of papers. Here we are, blossom on page 8 and 9. Some lovely colours. You've got lagoon, glacier, pear, smoothie, sunset and white daisy in that paper packet, and they're just like fabulous, and they go really well with the Kraft. So here we are, I've created this little book. When you open it up, as you can see on the inside, I've put in cardstock pieces and pieces of the blossom paper packet. So what I did for the students, or the children, because I wasn't quite sure how old they were going to be or how capable, I pre-cut all of these pieces of cardstock. So this size here, the Kraft panel, is 4 inches by 4 inches. I cut my cardstock pieces. I did some pear and I did some sunset and some glacier, and I cut them to 3 3/4 by 3 3/4, and that fitted perfectly within the little panel. Then I gave them the option of embossing if they wanted to, dry embossing, and some did that and they came out really nicely. As you can see, I've used the folders from our last seasonal expressions, plus I gave them a selection of cardstocks that were pre-cut and using a cricket. So for this shape here, any of the cricket shapes would do, as long as they're square shapes. I used my art philosophy cartridge, and I used this shape down here on page 53, the square 4 they call it, and you've got that shape that fits perfectly within the 4-inch panel, but it's been curved a wee bit until you get lovely curvy edges. Of course, you could also just corner around the edges of your squares if you don't have the cricket. That's, you can adapt it how you like. This one I cut to again 3 3/4 by 3 3/4, just so that it fits nicely within that panel. Now, as well as that, I give the children the option of sponging the edges. So here, for example, they've used a dauber and they've gone around the outside with a darker colour. I think this one was chocolate. And then you daub the edges and you get that lovely effect. You could also teach them these techniques after dry embossing. For example, the sanding. They can sand off their texture and end up with a little bit of the white core showing. Or they could use the whole ink pad and wipe it across the top, so they end up with their inked raised design. It's quite cool. So give them a chance to practice and experiment and see what they come up with. So that's the inside, nice and simple. Okay, so we ended up with 10 panels covered, and on the outside I cut some panels that were slightly bigger. This one in the center here, the blossom designer print, is 3 3/4 by 3 3/4, but the pear on the outside was a little bit bigger. That was 4 inches by 4 inches, so it fills the space perfectly. I cut a tiny spine, and I cut a piece on the back as well, sunset 4x4. So you've got all the panels were done for them, they just had to assemble it basically, and they got a chance to experiment using the daubing and the embossing. Now of course for decorating, letting them have access to your stamps and just going for it, so they've got phrases or icons or whatever, so they can decorate how they like. It's quite an open creative project. This one's relatively simple and nice and easy for kids to do. You know, there's not much there that they can't do, so it's a neat way of bringing them into the craft, basically shortcutting it so that it's nice and easy for them. But if you want to take your project a wee bit further, I may have taken this one just a little bit far, but as you can see with this one, it's the same book, but I've added bits and pieces to it, so this has become a little bit, possibly a little bit carried away. Here you can see, these are heritage photos of my family, so you've got my mother, her mother, her mother, and her mother are all featured in this book. This is the part of the book which is the same. I haven't changed this at all. So there's the concertina fold, but I've added bits because I knew, as always, that I would have more photos than I had spaces for, so I've added a couple of extra pockets towards the beginning here and added some extra flaps. So this is a little pocket, an envelope pocket with a photo of my mother and my father in it, and here I've got a pocket flap, a photo of my grandfather and my grandmother, and a photo of my parents in here. And then I've got later on in the book, so here's the concertina again. Here I've got an extra pocket which I've added, and in the pocket I've got some more little tags, sleeves. That's my mother in that photo there. So a lot more space for photos, which is great, although I may have, as I say, I may have got a little bit carried away because of course it does end up being quite bulky, and yeah, it's really pushing against the spine there. It does mean, of course, you've always got more options to add more flaps if you have more photos than you have space for, but yeah, that one's really bursting at the seams. So that gives you some ideas of what to do with your mini album from the new Seasonal Expressions. Here we are, the mini folio album there in Kraft cardstock. You can, of course, don't have to decorate it as I did, you can of course just stamp straight onto the Kraft, which is one of the lovely things about Kraft cardstock. You can just go for it to use it as is. You don't have to cover it with paper, you can use it for stamping. So there are lots of ways you can use it. Right, thank you very much for watching. I hope that gives you some ideas of what to do with your new mini books.